Welcome back to another episode. Today I'm going to be going over my favorite wide receivers, breaking them down into tiers in terms of fantasy. It's going to be full team PPR rankings. Fantasy season is here and drafts are mostly going to be this weekend. So, watch my videos to stay in tune and to get your best team. I'm going to tell you where to draft these wide receivers. And after this week, the NFL season kicks off on Thursday. So stay tuned. I'm going to keep on pumping out more content. Leave a like, comment, and hit that subscribe. Getting right into tier one here, we've got number one leading the pack, Davante Adams. And I don't think I have to spend too much time talking about Davante Adams. He was the wide receiver one last year. He had 17 touchdowns in just 14 games. We've added an extra game, so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that a guy like Davante Adams finishes with 20 touchdowns in this season, especially with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. They don't really have a reliable number two target. It pretty much is just going to mix between, Alan Lazard, Robert Tunyon, MVS, and Randall Cobb. There's not a, legitimate guy besides Davante Adams who demands the targets that he does. So he's easy for me to put at number one. He's the first wide receiver I'm taking off the board. If I'm in the back half of round one, I'm fine with taking Davante Adams in the first round. And pretty much all of these guys qualify for being taken in the first round. I wouldn't be upset with that. It makes sense to me. So at number two, we've got Stephon Diggs, another guy who's going to, demand a volume, demand targets. So you're looking at, a 25% target share at least with the Buffalo Bills pass heavy offense. Again, no certified number two wide receiver in the offense. You've got Emmanuel Sanders, but he's been on the decline for the past 3 seasons, visiting the Niners, the Saints. You just haven't seen the same explosiveness out of him. So you've got Diggs, you've got Gabriel Davis, but Diggs is going to push for 150 plus targets again this season. We're not going to sleep on him like we did in 2020. Stephon Diggs is my number two wide receiver. Again, fine with taking him in the first round. Number three is DeAndre Hopkins. You've got, a pass-friendly Arizona Cardinals, Cliff Kingsbury offense. AJ Green joins the receiving core, but that doesn't really bring me down on Hopkins at all. I'm still very, very interested. I think he's going to be, a top 10 guy guaranteed. He's been consistent throughout his career. One of the more consistent guys there is. Quarterback play has never mattered to him. So I'll go with DeAndre Hopkins at number 3. And at number 4, rising up boards quickly, is Calvin Ridley. I love getting Calvin Ridley in the second round of my drafts. It really makes me feel like, that's the best way to start. If you can get one of those top tier running backs in the first round and then pair them with Calvin Ridley in the second, you're in pretty good shape. Calvin Ridley should see more volume than he's seen his entire career. Julio Jones is now gone, but Kyle Pitts has inserted himself to demand a little bit of targets. But the Falcons are a terrible, terrible defense. They have, limited offensive weapons. Calvin Ridley should eat in 2021. I'm very, very bullish on Calvin Ridley. And at number 5, we've got Tyreek Hill. Again, the only reason he's at 5 is because these are PPR rankings. He's top 3 in non-PPR. So Tyreek Hill here lands at the number 5 spot basically because he doesn't have the chance to catch 100 balls like the top 4 guys. Tyreek Hill's not usually, catching 100 balls because he turns more plays into touchdowns. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but they don't target him in, typically not the 0 to 5 yard range. His average depth of target is much, much deeper, which is great for fantasy. But I'll take these 4 guys ahead of him just because, like I said, the reception total. Jumping right into tier number 2, we've got Justin Jefferson leading the way at number 6, followed by DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, AJ Brown, and Allen Robinson. This is a tough tier for me to try and grade just because, Justin Jefferson was just a rookie last year, and now I've already got him in my number 6 spot, for 2021, which feels so high. But, coming off the best rookie season a wide receiver could have of all time, 6 doesn't seem too high for me. And, an offense that scores quite a bit, but they really don't use any other weapons other than Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Dalvin Cook, and they're really unique in that way. Irv Smith just went out for the season, so there's more targets gone to even be in on Justin Jefferson if you weren't before. So Justin Jefferson at number 6 for me is a pretty fair play. I feel confident in having him as my wide receiver one on my fantasy team. So Justin Jefferson is lined up for an even bigger season than he had last year. And again, last year was his rookie season. Who knows what his ceiling is? At number seven, I've got DK Metcalf. Russell Wilson is his quarterback. That's has a lot to do with it. DK Metcalf is obviously an extremely talented player, but Russell Wilson is great at throwing the deep ball. And I think DK Metcalf has actually overtaken Tyler Lockett as that deep threat because, DK Metcalf's rookie season, I would say Tyler Lockett probably dealt with most of that, but Tyler Lockett gets most of the short yardage throws these days. DK Metcalf, another guy who's not going to have 100 receptions, or at least I don't, stat him out to have that. So DK Metcalf at number seven is very, very strong. Again, he has a case to push for more than 12 touchdowns, a touchdown machine, a guy of his size. That's kind of what you're looking for in fantasy from him, not necessarily the catches. So touchdowns, yards, Metcalf should go crazy in 2021. I've got him at number seven, but he has top five potential. And at number eight, we have Keenan Allen, and I feel weird about this one just because I know it's pretty high for Keenan, and he's he's never surpassed I think 8 touchdowns in his NFL career. So Keenan Allen, not a big touchdown guy, but again, one of those guys who's going to have 100 catches almost guaranteed, and in a PPR, that's very, very valuable. Keenan Allen, I believe, had 100 catches last year, but still failed to reach that 1,000-yard mark. So he's really just a PPR machine. And with Justin Herbert coming back and Mike Williams being the wide receiver too, who is out every other game, Keenan Allen's going to get peppered with targets. Jared Cook joins that passing game, but really like Keenan Allen going into the season. It's really health concerns for me just because he's getting older. Hopefully Keenan Allen can stay on the field. But again, in this second tier, these are guys I'm comfortable with having for my wide receiver one. So a guy like Allen Robinson, pretty much you have to draft a wide receiver by round 3 because that's the latest you'll get him. So number 9, I've got Terry McLaurin of the Washington football team. He's going into a situation where he has the best quarterback that he's had in his career, which makes me feel great about him. He's a guy who's going to get himself open. He demands targets. Targets come with talent. You don't get the targets if you're not open. You don't get open if you can't get open. So Terry McLaurin, I love him this year. People sleep on him. So if he falls and falls, Terry McLaurin as my wide receiver one, I feel great about that. Not much else to say about him, though. I think Curtis Samuel will have some targets, and they have other weapons on the team, but Terry McLaurin is in line for a big, big season. At number 10, I have A.J. Brown. I would have had him much higher before the Julio news, but Julio is there now, and Julio is one of the all-time greats, and he's going to demand targets. So A.J. Brown is one of those guys who has been extremely efficient throughout his career. Some would say like close to Tyreek Hill, where he would, he's getting 1,000-yard seasons on 60 catches. You know what I mean? So imagine if this guy gets 150 targets in a season. We're not going to see that this year, but he should get a little bit more volume with Johnny Smith and Corey Davis leaving. There's targets to be had there, and Julio will demand some, but hopefully A.J. Brown will take the other half. If there's a situation where they can make their offense like Minnesota's, where they pretty much just involve their two best wide receivers, not really throwing to the tight end or anything like that, then, A.J. Brown could have top 5 potential, but I've got him at 10 pretty much because of Julio. And at number 11, we have Allen Robinson, Mr. Consistency. He's never a sexy pick for your fantasy team, but again, I'm comfortable with having him as my wide receiver one. There's no one else even close on the team to Allen Robinson. Darnell Mooney will probably break out this year, but, skill-wise, Allen Robinson is up there at the top. In the NFL, honestly. And having him as my wide receiver one isn't too bad. The Bears are going to be trailing in most of their games. And if it's Justin Fields back there, that could be worse for Allen Robinson, but I don't see it being too bad of a situation. So Allen Robinson rounds out my tier 2. Okay, so kicking off tier 3, we have Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Chris Godwin could have a better season, but it's just hard to predict when you have so many talented receivers on one roster, being Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown. it's one of the harder passing games to predict. You don't know where the targets are going to go just because all of those guys are elite level receivers. You know what I mean? It's not out of the realm of possibilities that Antonio Brown steps in and is now the target leader and leads this receiving core. So I have Chris Godwin in tier three. You won't see Mike Evans on tier three either. So I've got him in tier four basically because last year he had games where he had two catches, two touchdowns. And, that's alarming. And that's basically all the research we have to base off of. So I'm going to go with Chris Godwin at 12. Really love the talent of Chris Godwin, a huge catch and traffic guy, and he catches deep balls. So his breakout was a couple years ago, but I think he can have an even better season. I don't see why he can't be a 100 catch guy. But again, it's really just how the offense is spread around by Brady. Chris Godwin at the 12. A guy really strong wide receiver too. Sometimes I even get him in my flex, and I feel really good about that. I've got CeeDee Lamb at 13. That's actually pretty low compared to consensus around the fantasy scape here. CeeDee Lamb at 13 feels high for me, but people have him in that top 10, and CeeDee Lamb joins one of the better passing games going into 2021, and now that Dak is back, he should deliver top 15 potential. CeeDee Lamb was a top 10 wide receiver with Dak under the helm in his first 5 games. So CeeDee Lamb should just go crazy this year. Right underneath him, I've got Amari Cooper, just because Amari Cooper is no bum. Like, if he's healthy, he's going to demand targets again because he's one of those guys that get open. And CeeDee Lamb can get open, but he also provides like a different level of explosiveness than Amari Cooper. So I can see CeeDee Lamb taking Amari Cooper's job as the wide receiver one, but Amari Cooper will still probably have 1,000-yard season with at least 6 or 7 touchdowns. So not too bad there. I'm in on the Cowboys passing attack though, just because their defense is ass, and they should have a much better chance to score points because they should have to score like 35 to even win. I'm exaggerating just because it's Cowboys, but CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, I'm in. CeeDee Lamb as my wide receiver one makes me uncomfortable, so I will leave it at that. Cooper Kupp at 15, another pair of teammates. I've got Cooper Kupp at 15, Robert Woods at 16. I think if you're aiming for ceiling, you want Cooper Kupp. He hasn't had a quarterback who can throw touchdowns at a clip like Matthew Stafford can. So with Matthew Stafford stepping in, I really like Cooper Kupp opposed to Robert Woods, but I like both of them again as top 20 options. There's analysts that are really high on Robert Woods as opposed to Cooper Kupp, and I'm not sure why. I know Cooper Kupp has injury concerns, and Robert Woods has shown just such a level of consistency, but it's more like a level of like top 15 consistency, and I want to go for that upside in my drafts. So Cooper Kupp, I think, has top 10 upside. He's a big touchdown scorer. Matthew Stafford, if there's pass heavy as it seems they will be without Cam Akers, and they don't want to rely on Sony Michel and Darrell Henderson. I think McVay is going to throw a lot more this season. So I'm in on both of those guys again. Same teams. You've got the Rams and so if you notice actually in those rankings, I just noticed. So we have teammates in CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and then you have the Bucks passing game just getting started with Chris Godwin. But those are 3 of the passing games that are going to be hard to figure out. This is the way that I've chose to go about it. Starting at number 17 is Julio Jones, and it pains me to put him at number 17. It feels so low, and I know I said he was going to demand targets, but I don't think he's going to do as much as A.J. Brown is going to do with those targets. Obviously, A.J. Brown being a third-year wide receiver, but Julio Jones at 17, I think he's going to demand the targets. If you get him here, there's a huge chance that he pays off, as a discount for you, and he's a top 10 wide receiver, but basically, I've got him at 17 because he's in a run-heavy offense with, they don't go acquire Julio Jones if they don't want to throw more, but you have Derrick Henry on your team. You're not going to, you got to give him at least 15 to 20 carries a game, if not 25. But now that Julio's on the game, in their offense, I think the carries go down a little bit for Henry. But you've got Tannehill at quarterback. They've never really ran a deep passing scheme or anything Julio Jones can kind of fit right into. So that's why I've got him low. The main reason I've got him at 17, though, is because of injury concerns. Julio hasn't been healthy. He's injured, every season pretty much. And I know he's fought through injuries and pretty much played through them, but, last season is a red flag to me. So I'm pretty much avoiding Julio unless I get, a crazy discount on him. Being right into this last tier, we've got Deontay Johnson starting it off at 18. This is tier number 4. These are guys, low end wide receiver twos entering the wide receiver 3 range. We've got Deontay Johnson, who, of course, I don't feel comfortable about. Again, it feels like these top 25 guys, you're gonna have teammates around them that are drafted the same. So you've got the Steelers too, who I haven't even mentioned. We had the Bucks, Rams, in the last segment, but you have the Steelers also with Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't even have Juju in my top 25. I think Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool are much better receivers than Juju overall, and he has that slot role. So maybe for PPR, he'll make my top 30 just because of catches. But I think he had 97 catches last year for 831 yards, and that's boo boo. Number 18 though, Deontay Johnson. Like I said, he's shined in the preseason yet again. It looks like they're going to use him as the outside receiver. So I really like Deontay Johnson. He gets a lot of separation. He had problems with drops last year, but I think the volume is going to be there for him ultimately, and they still like him, as a target. So I'm going to say Deontay Johnson at 18. I've got Mike Evans at 19. Not too low on Evans. In my opinion, he could be much, much lower after the season he put up last year, pretty much just depending on touchdowns. I think he has the skill, obviously, to be a top 10 wide receiver. But again, in this offense where you have a guy like Gio who's added, you have Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, he appears to be the low volume, high touchdown guy. So I have him at 19. Number 20, I've got DJ Moore. DJ Moore is one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL. Extremely underrated. He's so talented. I just want to see what it would be like for him to get 100 targets or even just like 130 targets because he turned 60, 70 catches into, 1,100 yards. DJ Moore needs to be targeted more. And I hope that, Sam Darnold falls in love with him early and they have, that chemistry. So DJ Moore at 20, he can easily finish higher. I love picking him as my third wide receiver. That makes me feel good. Tyler Lockett, number 21. He slides this low because of his variety of games he had last year. He had games where he scored 55 fantasy points, but then the second half of the season, he couldn't get above 5 or 7 fantasy points. So, he's really hit or miss. So I would make sure you pair Tyler Lockett with a guy like, someone who's consistent, like let's say like a Stephon Diggs and Robert Woods. Then maybe I'll go Tyler Lockett my flex. You have that ability to explode, but you're going to get that consistent wide receiver play from those other guys. At 22, I have Brandon Ayuk. This is obviously predicting a breakout season. I think he's the real number 1 receiver in San Francisco. Debo Samuel will get his touches, but he gets them in unique ways. Anything that's going to be deeper than 10 yards, it's going to Ayuk or Kittle. Don't want to speak too much on Ayuk. I've been talking about him, throughout all my shows. And Claypool at 23, it's a similar situation. These are guys, second-year wide receivers who are ready to break out. And Claypool, you saw it a little bit last year, but he's a beast in the red zone. So another touchdown guy that I'm targeting. Number 24, you've got 3 second-year breakout wide receivers in a row. Jerry Jeudy at number 24, pretty high on him. I think he overtakes Courtland Sutton as that number 1 wide receiver in Denver and, really showcases his abilities this year. He had troubles with drops last year, but drops are not an indication of a poor wide receiver. If you take a look at the statistics, who's led the NFL in drops, it's usually a good player, which, doesn't make much sense, but it's a mental thing. At 25, I have T. Higgins. Might be too low on T. Higgins after the reports about Jamar Chase. T. Higgins should come off to a hot start, with that Bengals team. And again, a team where they don't have much to offer on defense. They should be throwing the ball quite a bit, but one of those passing games where there's 3 wide receivers yet again, and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. I am going to take T. Higgins out of those 3 at the moment with, Jamar Chase kind of struggling in the preseason. I wouldn't, run with that too much. I think Jamar Chase is going to be a great player in the NFL. I just think, he hasn't played for a year. He's probably going to be much, much better in the second half as opposed to the first. But that's going to wrap up my wide receiver rankings, my tiers, heading into the season. The season starts a week from tomorrow. I couldn't be more excited. If you guys can keep smashing the like button, keep commenting, whatever you think about my rankings, I want to know, leave those comments. I appreciate it. And we'll see you later.